Hello, this is day 10 and I'll be talking about what it's like to live in Canada. So I'm going to mention some pros and I'm going to mention some cons as well. So pros of living in Canada is that it's a very multicultural, diverse country. So you get to experience so many different cultures, so many different languages, so many different types of food and everything. I think in terms of that, it's really, really great. Like you could pretty much experience the whole world just being in one city in Canada, which I think is a really cool thing. It's also a really large country, so you can travel so many different places. It's like a very, very big country. I don't think some people really like understand the mass of the country that it is. And it's like, just because of how large it is, I feel like it's also diverse in the types of landscapes that there is as well. So like there's like super cold in the north, and then there's like mountains, and then there's like prairies and like farmland and everything. I think it's like, if you want to travel, I feel like Canada would be a great place to like travel just the whole country. In general, there's friendly people in general. So people in Canada in general are nice. With and yeah, like you're definitely gonna find people that are not nice, but in general, the people are nice. So there's also like a really beautiful countryside in Canada as well. So when you like, if you leave a city and you're just driving around or anything, there's a lot of really nice things to see that's not in a city. And then there's also a lot of opportunity for anybody that wants to work or study. But with this kind of leads me to my cons, is that there are limited jobs available, or you need to have like a lot of experience, a lot of studying behind you to be able to get a really good job in Canada. So right now, I graduated university, and if I wanted to work in Canada in my field of study, then I would have to do like my master's and my PhD before I could even get a job in psychology. Even that, like let's say if I wanted to do something in human resources, because that's a common thing, you also need to have a lot of experience doing something like that. But how can you get experience when you were just in university for four or more years, right? I feel like that's something that's a really big problem actually in Canada, is that a lot of these students are graduating university and then they have to go and get just like a minimum wage paying job because they can't afford to not have a job, but they're unable to find a job in their field because of the extreme requirements for these jobs. Even if they're entry level, like entry level jobs, you need to have so much experience, which is crazy. And then the cost of living is very expensive right now as well. So I was living in a city that was considered one of the cheaper cities in Canada, and my rent was still very expensive, like $1,400, like what, $1,400 a month. That's just rent for like a 1-bedroom apartment. And like, yeah, it was a nicer apartment, like the location was nicer, but I feel like that's a really extreme amount to pay just for a 1-bedroom apartment. So also the minimum wage in Canada is very bad. Like you can't live off of minimum wage. If let's say if I wanted to have the apartment that I had that was $1,400 a month for rent, and I was working minimum wage full time, I would not be able to live. I would have to get like a roommate or something. I would not be able to live just on my own with doing that, because you also have not only rent but utilities, and then also you need to have a vehicle to do anything in Canada. Like you need to be able to drive. If you're studying in university as an international student, and let's say you live close to campus and like you have a job that's close to campus and whatnot, then that makes it a little bit easier for you to not be able to drive if you live close to like the things that you need to go to. But if you ever wanted to leave the city that you live in, it's really, really hard to be able to do that without a vehicle, because a lot of the time there's not any sort of like bus or anything that you can take between cities. There might be in some other places, like some provinces, but most provinces don't really have that. So if you ever wanted to travel around Canada, you would need to be able to drive, because even to drive, like even in the cities, to go and see something, you need to be able to drive there, because the public transportation is absolutely atrocious in Canada as well. Like some cities it's probably pretty good, right? Like some of the bigger cities like Vancouver or Toronto, it's probably good. But some of the other smaller cities, it's the transportation is really bad. Like the bus system, terrible. Like in the wintertime especially, the buses will always run late, or they just won't run at all because of the weather, right? But I feel like they don't really give you adequate warning for the bus not running. So it's a really hard situation. Like, that's why I feel like this is like the biggest downfall of living in Canada, is the fact that you need a vehicle, which just adds more cost to your living. And then the public transportation, if you don't have a vehicle, the public transportation is really bad. And not only that, just like in the cities in general in Canada, there's a lot of homeless people, and the problem is continually growing. So I feel like this is also something that's like not very good either. It's just like there's becoming a lot of unsafe areas in cities, and it's just becoming unsafe in general to live in certain cities in Canada. But so in general, to kind of sum up everything that I've said, I think that Canada is a really, really nice country, like in terms of landscape and everything like that. But when it comes to actually living there, it's a little bit of a different situation. I feel like that's kind of how it is anywhere though. Like you could travel anywhere and you could be like, oh my god, it's so great, like I love being here. But if you live there, the situation is so much different, right? So I would say that in general, if you want to live in Canada, that's great, but definitely think of everything and think of how you're going to be able to live, and try and have like a good job if you can, you know, like get roommates or anything if you need to. But I think in general, it's not a bad place to live. You definitely still do get, like, you have a lot of like freedoms, right? Like you can go and do whatever you want, because not whatever you want, but like you can go and like leave the city and like go to the lake or go to the beach or whatever. Like there's a lot of different things that you could do, and it's really fun. But there's also a lot of bad things as well. So I think if you want to live there, just think about everything.